Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. Happy Cinco de Mayo to everyone that is celebrating. We said that we were going to do the review for Backlash 2000. This was David's request. What's up, David? This is David's request. He wanted me to do this show, so here we go. Reviewing Backlash 2000, uh, taking place on April the 30th, the year 2000, in the MCI Center in Washington, D.C. It was sponsored by Castrol GTX, and it was the second backlash in history, but it was the first backlash that was independent of itself. The 1999 edition, the year before, was called Backlash in Your House. But there's no In Your House here. This is just Backlash. It is a pay per view that took place after WrestleMania 2000. After WrestleMania 16, aka WrestleMania 2000, this event took place. So let's get into the matches. First match, Christian and Edge defeat D-Generation X, Road Dogg, and X-Pac with Tori. Now, DX had been broken up for a year at this point. They broke up for the first time at WrestleMania 15 when in the European title match between Shane McMahon and X-Pac, Triple H comes out just right after reuniting with China. In his match, he then turns on X-Pac and he joins the corporation. That was the beginning of Triple H's heel run, right? But now the Triple H has formed the McMahon-Helmsley alliance after WrestleMania. Now Triple H and his McMahon-Helmsley alliance, along with Shane, Vince, and Stephanie, have reformed DX. So DX now are heels. Same DX, but they're heels now. Okay, and here they take on Edge and Christian. Dean Malenko, the light heavyweight champion, defeats Scotty 2 Hotty. Bull Buchanan and the Big Boss Man defeat the APA, Farouk and Bradshaw. Now, about Dean Malenko. Dean Malenko, 2000 was a crazy year for Dean Malenko and for the WWF because thanks to creative differences with WCW, the Radicals were formed. Who are the Radicals? The Radicals were basically four men: Perry Saturn, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, and Chris Benoit, who got fed up with being pushed to the side in WCW. They felt like nobody was listening to them. And, they've been working their asses off for years in WCW. Guerrero and Benoit had been with WCW since coming over in late 1995. Perry Saturn had been with them since 97, after himself coming over from ECW. And Dean Malenko similarly. All these men had tremendous wrestling credentials. In Dean Malenko's case, he was a second generation wrestler, the son of Boris Malenko. So they all had credentials, you know what I mean? But WCW didn't want to use them. They only used the already established main event guys, the Kevin Nashes, the Hulk Hogans, the Goldbergs, the DDPs. They always put them in the mid card. So finally, in October of 1999, somebody jumps from the WWF to WCW, and that is the lead writer, Vince Russo. And Vince Russo, was notorious for using a lot of the younger guys. So when he got over to WCW, he made a vow to do things differently than Eric Bischoff, and he was going to push a lot of the younger talent, which is exactly what he did. And he formed them into different factions. He formed Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio into the Filthy Animals, and Perry Saturn, Chris Benoit, and Dean Malenko, along with Shane Douglas, into the Revolution. And basically, the Revolution was a group of young wrestlers that were going to challenge the already established old guard in WCW. But that storyline took on a deeper meaning when Russo was, due to low ratings, just being there a couple of months, Russo was let go, and WCW wants to bring back in the old booker of WCW, Kevin Sullivan, and Kevin Sullivan wants to put Hulk Hogan back on top, Ric Flair back on top, Goldberg, all those old WCW guys, and the Radicals are like, that's it. They were convinced that Kevin Sullivan had it out for them because why? Chris Benoit basically stole Kevin Sullivan's wife, woman. So why wouldn't he have it out for him, right? So he leaves WCW right after winning the WCW World Title. Sold out 2000. The match between Sid and Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit wins the WCW Championship, but that's not even good enough. He feels like even though he's the WCW champion, still Kevin Sullivan through his booking practices will do stuff to undermine him. So all four of them leave, and they show up on the January 31st edition of Monday Night Raw. And initially, they were seen as baby faces. They were good guys. They were guests of Cactus Jack, who was feuding with Triple H at the time. But after a while, it's revealed that DX had them in their back pocket all along because in order to qualify for contracts, they would have to wrestle these series of matches against hand-picked opponents of Triple H, and they lost all those matches. So we stand to reason the next Monday Night Raw, they don't have contracts, right? Well, they do, and they turn on Cactus Jack, right? They turn on him, and they're allies with DX. So now it's a mega faction, the Radicals and DX. And it doesn't last. The Radicals don't really last all that long, but they're featured here. And Dean Malenko is the light heavyweight champion now. Crash Holly, the hardcore champion, defeats Hardcore Holly, Jeff Hardy, Matt Hardy, Perry Saturn, and Taz. Pretty good match here. Hardcore matches were always fun back in that era. The Big Show defeated Kurt Angle. Singles match. TNA, Test and Albert with Trish Stratus. This is a new team, Test and Albert, and Trish Stratus came out as their manager. I'm sure David liked this. This is one of the first shows of Trish Stratus's career. Eddie Guerrero already with China. China moved away from Triple H. This time, that Triple H was a heel. She wasn't going to be with them because Stephanie was with him. So they needed something else for China to do. So Eddie Guerrero basically became this Latin lover stereotype where he would call China Mamacita. Basically what you saw with Dominic Mysterio and Rhea Ripley is basically what Eddie Guerrero and China, they did it first. And it was cool because you never really got to see this really creative side of Eddie Guerrero when he was in WCW. They wouldn't let him be creative. He tried with the LWO in '98, but they wouldn't really let it happen in WCW. But WWE was all about entertainment, so of course they did. And he defeated S.A. Rios with Lita. Of course, we talked about S.A. Rios and his debut in 1998 in WCW as Aguilar. Yeah, Test and Albert. We talked about that match. David, absolutely. Albert, he'd been there for a year already. He originally came in as Prince Albert, a bodyguard of Droz, because Droz's whole gimmick was he had tattoos and stuff. So Prince Albert, haha, Vince Russo type humor. But then they put him with Test because Test wasn't really doing much of anything either. Once he came into WWE and turned heel, joining the corporation, and then fighting Shane for the right to marry Stephanie and almost married Stephanie on camera. So Trish Stratus had just come to the company, and TNA, they were the first TNA, Test and Albert. Before there was TNA, the promotion, there was TNA, this TNA. Chris Benoit defeated Chris Jericho at by disqualification. These three had come off, these two had come off as 2/3 of that great um, three-way match with Angle at WrestleMania. So, and they always had tremendous chemistry. And once again, like I said, even Jericho, even though he left in '99, even Jericho was fed up with the politics of WCW. So you could see that the shift was definitely happening. And The Rock defeated Triple H with Mr. McMahon and Stephanie McMahon in the corner and Shane McMahon as the referee. Now, other than the Benoit Chris Jericho match, this was probably my favorite match of the show because people wanted to see The Rock do it at WrestleMania. He didn't get that chance. He was screwed out of it when Vince McMahon turned on him. But he did it here. He defeated Triple H in his first real run as a babyface. And this would be a great year for The Rock because he would become the dominant babyface because Stone Cold Steve Austin would soon not be around. Would soon not be around anymore. And I don't even think. He would be going to surgery. But here, Austin does come out, and he and The Rock celebrate. They they demolish DX's bus that they have out there. So it was a cool sight to see after they had the great rivalry they had, Austin and Rock. Seeing them out there was always great. Austin driving his pickup truck, towing the DX truck. Linda McMahon coming out with Earl Hebner, pushing down Stephanie and ordering Earl Hebner to make the count. The Rock pedigreeing Pat Patterson and Gerald Briscoe. Because the storyline here with regards to Triple H and Earl Hebner was that Earl Hebner had actually counted Triple H out of a match, and Chris Jericho briefly won the WWF Championship because of Earl Hebner's fast count. It was later reversed, but that was the story. The April 19th episode of Monday Night Raw, Chris Jericho, that was actually Chris Jericho's first world title win. Even though they don't count it in the record books, he actually defeated Triple H. Wouldn't it have been crazy if he actually had the title? You know what I mean? But he didn't. So, but this is a Rock. Like I said, he will be he would become the face of the WWE while Stone Cold Steve Austin is going for surgery. And this would be a very lucrative year for the WWF because. This will be their first full year going public on the New York Stock Exchange, and it will be their most successful year financially in all of their history. So, 2000 was an amazing year to be a wrestling fan. Not necessarily because both companies were going at it with each other, because that was not the case. WCW. Equally competitive. If you want that, that's 98. But WCW have fallen back severely, and losing these guys, losing Benoit, losing Malenko, losing Saturn, and losing Eddie Guerrero hurt WCW tremendously. They brought back Vince Russo. He and Eric Bischoff formed the New Blood, and they tried again to do that storyline of the younger guys versus the older guys. They put the older guys in the Millionaires Club and the younger guys in New Blood, and it led to a match between Hulk Hogan and Billy Kidman, but in a graveyard match between Vampiro and Sting. But it just wasn't to be, guys. You know, WCW had some fallen back severely, but WWE was on a roll, man. And this McMahon Helmsley angle would last, you know, the entire year. With Triple H and the McMahons. David, anything else you want to add about this pay-per-view? I know this was your choice to do a review on it. Uh, I don't have much. I rewatched it on the WWE Network for the purposes of this review. I don't have much to add to it because I didn't watch this. Like I always say, when I was younger, I was 16 at this time. When this aired, right? But 15, about to be 16, and I wasn't really ordering pay-per-views back then, other than WrestleMania and maybe the Royal Rumble and maybe SummerSlam. But when I did later watch this pay-per-view, I gotta say this is one of the first non-Big Four pay-per-views that I really, really liked. You know what I mean? And that really, really sticks out. But yeah, and I missed out on some of these because one thing I always thought with these minor pay-per-views, no big storyline um, ever really happened with these minor pay-per-views. That's why I never really. Yeah, David says a 60-minute Iron Man match between The Rock and Triple H. I'm pretty sure they could have pulled it off, David. I mean, they had good chemistry. Those guys, um, you know, those guys, every time they got into the ring, they had good chemistry. And their story goes all the way back to 1997. Like I said, went further back, even before 97. When The Rock had his first match, who was he against? Triple H, right? Triple H was on the opposing team with the heels, with Jerry the King Lawler and those guys. And then in 97, when The Rock wins his first Intercontinental Championship on Raw against Triple H. And then SummerSlam 98, The Rock and Triple H. Like David's pointing out, the first SmackDown, the Iron Man match with Shawn Michaels as the referee. But one thing we never got, much like Cena and Orton, one thing we never got was a one-on-one match between these two at WrestleMania. They've had. Yeah, I remember that, David. Yeah. They had a lot of confrontations, and there was a match teased in 2016 that was supposed to be a mixed tag match involving The Rock and Triple H, but we never got it. And unfortunately, we never will because due to his heart condition, Triple H, now Paul Levesque, has retired from in-ring competition. He's still in professional wrestling. He's the head of creative at WWE right now. But 2000 was also a very important time in his life because while working on this storyline, with Triple H Stephanie McMahon as his on-air wife, he later develops feelings for Stephanie McMahon and later marries Stephanie McMahon in real life. And this would, of course, propel his career to astronomical heights. Places, they already had him as a star, but they would put him as an even bigger star. One thing about Triple H, and I can say, and I'm not saying that he's not talented, but one thing that he is very good at is connecting himself with people that actually matter. From the time he started in wrestling, he got hooked up with Killer Kowalski. That gives him a lot of credit. Killer Kowalski, a tremendous legend in the WWE, right? Especially in the New England area where Triple H is from. Then he gets to WWE. He becomes friends with Shawn Michaels, Diesel, and Razor Ramon, the Clique. He positions himself in that set of friends. And then finally, when he gets to that certain level, he then positions himself with Stephanie McMahon and becoming close to the McMahon family and to Vince. So his talent plus his networking got him to where he is today, where he basically David's saying that Trish should have won the Women's Royal Rumble at WrestleMania 16 in a women's title. Yeah, that would have been cool. But I don't even think they really trusted Trish as a wrestler just yet, David. She would become an amazing wrestler, but I don't think in 2000, her first year, her rookie year, I don't think they really had faith in her yet. Who was leading the women's division at that time was like Ivory, Jacqueline. China was going in between the women's division and the men's division. A year later, she would defeat Ivory in her last WrestleMania match at WrestleMania 17. So I don't know if they trusted Trish yet, David. There's only one other valet in history that made the transition from a valet to a wrestler, and that was Sable. Because you got to remember, Sherry Martel was a valet, but she was a wrestler first. So was Moolah. So Sable had been the only one, and they didn't know they had somebody 10 times more talented than Sable in their ranks and Trish. They would soon find out, and Trish and Lita would be on their collision course against each other. Anyway, guys, peace. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you, David, for this idea. Be willing to review other classic WWE pay-per-views. I give this one a B+, definitely a B+. I take points away because I feel like this should have been a title defense of Triple H against The Rock as champion, because if you're going to put it on The Rock anyway, why not put it on him at WrestleMania? Like, The Rock never had a time where he walked into WrestleMania as the champion and left as the champion. Never. He walked into WrestleMania 15 as the champion against Stone Cold, lost to Stone Cold. He walked into WrestleMania 16 as the challenger, and he left defeated. He walked into WrestleMania 17 as the champion and left defeated. He walked into WrestleMania 29 as the champion, and he left defeated. The Rock has won big matches against the likes of John Cena and Hulk Hogan, but never for the championship. So I don't know why they made that decision, but oh well. I guess they wanted to have a heel walk out of WrestleMania as the champion. Peace.